can we talk about something that I think needs to be discussed much more than it is? The mathematical miseducation of the South African population. Can we talk about that? Can I show you these numbers? These are the average, modal, and median marks in maths literacy, and physical science for the last 3 years. Look at this. Maths 2024, average mark 38.6%. Median mark 36%. Modal mark 34%. Maths literacy 2024, the average mark 45.5%. The median mark 44%. The modal mark 37%. Right? These are not great numbers. Physical science, average mark 40%. Median mark 38%. Modal mark 33%. You know that distribution curve that you sometimes see in the statistics textbooks or whatever? There's the normal distribution curve. But when you have skewed distribution either on one side or another side, you need to look at more marks than just the average. The average as a statistical measure works quite well when the distribution curve is normal. But if there are discrepancies, maybe too many overperformers, too many underperformers, it can be a misleading data point. For example, if you are making 100,000 a month and I'm making 1,000 a month, and then we work out the average between the two of us, the average salary of the two of us, right? 100,000 on the other side, 101,000 is 50,500. But clearly, that's not accurate, right? That's not what's happening. So sometimes you need to use different data sets to measure. So the median gives you basically the mark in the middle of the distribution curve as that particular distribution curve looks. And then the modal mark is the most frequently occurring mark in that particular data set. So if you think about 34% modal mark for maths, 37% modal mark for maths literacy, physical science, 33%. These are not great marks. This data, by the way, comes from questions to the Minister of Basic Education, which were asked by Musi Maimane from Build One South Africa. And I think these were important questions and very valuable contributions from Build One South Africa in exposing the state of the crisis in maths and science education in South Africa. So I congratulate Build One South Africa for asking that particular question. It was an important question because I look at the data that is released by the Department of Basic Education every year. You know, these numbers are not disclosed during the announcements of the matric results. They're not disclosed in the exam reports and the diagnostic reports. The mode, the median, the average, never disclosed. But think about this. Any parent who gets a report knows that the class average is always included in the report so that you can measure the performance of your child and the performance of the class. Because if the class is getting an average mark of 42%, then you know that this class is also not. Shouldn't they be getting something much higher? Right? And you can compare with how the other schools are doing, what are the average marks. If you look at schools like St. Mary's, they will tell you the class average for our matric learners in maths was 60-something% or 75% or whatever the case is. And they actually have a high number of students doing maths. I think they have 90% of their students doing maths, and then they have high average marks. In fact, let me just show you that data. So there's a big discrepancy between the data from the Department of Basic Education and the data from schools such as St. Mary's Waverley, if you look at that data, right? So one school doing phenomenally, showing what can be achieved if resources are allocated properly and education is prioritized. I don't think that there's anything as a special private school that can do things that other schools cannot do or achieve. What man can do, man may do. Or what man may do, man can't do. There's some saying which goes like that. I can't remember the exact wording. But the essence of it is that, you know, God is not a respecter of persons, but he's a respecter of principles. You follow the principles of quality education, you get quality outcomes in that education. So I'm bringing this up today, these numbers up today, because I think it's important that we remember that the youth of 76 were protesting more than just the use of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. They were protesting miseducation, mass miseducation, and specifically the Bantu Education Act of 1953, which created an inferior education system for Black people on purpose with the intention of the economic handicapping of that particular community. We must not forget what Hendrik Verwoerd said about the education of the Black child, particularly as it pertains to maths. He said, "What is the use of teaching the Bantu child mathematics when he cannot use it in practice. There's no place for him in the European community above the level of certain forms of labor. He said this in 1953. That's what he said. This is what people were protesting and dying for. So I think as you listen to Youth Day, presentations from various politicians, and they're just talking about youth, young people, we're here for you, we're looking out for you, and all of that. I think we also have to refocus the conversations and ask ourselves and ask the political parties and the political leaders what they are doing and going to do or planning to do to fix the crisis in the classrooms of South Africa. I saw a recent story, and this is what the story was saying. Basically, there are 14,832 teacher posts which are not filled. The teacher ratio is now 38 to 1, 38 pupils to 1 teacher. And this is according to a document which was discussed in the department's meeting on the 6th of June between the Minister of Basic Education and the provincial MECs. Think about that. They were saying there are 29,292 vacancies at public schools right now. And that includes the 14,832 teachers. There are also vacancies for 8,142 heads of departments, 2,872 for deputy principals, and 3,446 for principals. There are schools right now without leadership. Not forgetting also the other story that there's over 400 schools which don't have maths teachers right now. This is a crisis. And it needs to be discussed in the context of the protests of the youth in 1976. There's no industrial revolution without mathematics evolution. There's no economic freedom without mathematical proliferation. The mkhonto of 2025 is education. You have to gwaza with software. You have to zabalaza with stoichiometry and trigonometry. The game has changed, and these AIs are changing the game even further. And that's a reality. Think about this stat. There were 250,000 students who sat for the maths exam in 2024. But there were 1.2 million people in their class in grade 1. 250,000 writing the exam. But when they started, the class was 1.2 million people in grade 1. Modal mark of 34 in maths. Something is deeply wrong. And what am I trying to say? It's an insult to the sacrifices that were made by the youth of 76. And guess what? The happiest man who is smiling in his grave right now is Hendrik Verwoerd. He's smiling because his plan is being manifested even post the end of apartheid. Think about this. It's something that has to be changed. Proficiency in maths is not genetic or racial. It's not for some races to the exclusion of others. It's not. Anyone can excel in maths, physical science. Biggest lie that we've been told is that maths is hard. It's challenging. It requires attention at times. But what isn't, even English literature, is challenging and requires the same amount of attention. But we keep being told maths is hard, black people are not good at maths, etc. This is just mass deception, false information. And we inculcate that and we see 34% and we're like, well, not everyone is good at maths. Some people are good with their hands. You buy into it if you do that. Who said black people are not good at maths? The first universities were in Africa. Africans were building sophisticated mathematical architecture for hundreds of years. So you don't think that there was any mathematical knowledge required to build the Mutapa Empire, Mapungubwe, the pyramids? All of these things are playing out in Africa. First universities in Timbuktu. What do you think Timbuktu is? Please, man. Please, let's understand that this proficiency in math is not a genetic thing. It's not just for people in Asia or people in India or people wherever. No, anybody can be good at maths if they are given the ingredients to excel. Right? That's why you can see a diversity of people leading in Silicon Valley. So we mustn't buy this idea that no, there's just an inherent challenge that 34% as an average, as a modal mark is acceptable. 38% as an average is acceptable. We mustn't accept that. Something that needs to be changed. And what we are witnessing from the data is the mass miseducation of the South African population and their deprivation from economic opportunities that require an understanding and a proficiency in STEM. That's what we're witnessing. And as we witness that, we must not forget that young people went out of the classrooms, risked their lives, lost their lives in 1976, fighting for an end to economic subjugation through miseducation. Let's not forget that. And let's hold these political leaders and their organizations to account and refocus them on that crisis that is playing out in the classrooms. What's playing out in the classrooms is like cancer, it's like diabetes, it's like these lifestyle diseases. When the stroke hits you, it hits you like that, right? It's just boom, and you can die from a stroke. But the thing that took you to the point where you were likely to have a stroke happens gradually because of how you're consuming food, how you are living, your lifestyle, your exercise habits, etc., etc. That's the way it works. And then when it hits you, it's all of a sudden. And we have to be aware of that. And this is what's playing out in the classrooms. It's never, something that you can quickly see that, hey, there's a crisis or whatever, but it's a crisis that does play out. And these high levels of youth unemployment, those numbers of youth unemployment stem from the failures of the classroom. Then you'll hear politicians talking big game about unemployment and creating jobs, but talking with the whisper about how they want to fix classrooms. It's a big problem. Let's end on that note for today's episode. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let's have a conversation in the chat. I'll meet you in the comments.